Elon Musk is about to steal billions of dollars from people's 401ks, pensions, and retirement funds. And the US markets are changing the rules specifically to let him do this. Now, before we talk about what's happening today, we need some background information, specifically how we even got here in the first place. Let's start with Elon Musk. So Elon Musk has been, over the last few years, doing a bunch of financial shenanigans, which probably shouldn't be legal, but because he's Elon Musk, he can just do. And that's how he's gotten his current net worth of $839 billion. The next 4 wealthiest people in the world combined barely become worth more than him. And most of that is from very recent stuff happening. So we all know that Elon Musk bought Twitter. I'm going to call it Twitter because its new name is stupid. Elon Musk then sold Twitter, yes, he sold Twitter, to his own company for $45 billion including debt, which is actually more than he bought it for. Now, you would think that buying his own company would require a transfer of money because he has a lot of people that he still owes money to for buying Twitter. But you would be wrong. So essentially he did this by saying, I buy this company by borrowing money from these people. I now value this company that I bought by borrowing money at this amount. And this other company I also own at this amount. I will now give the people I owe money to stock of this company that I alone decide the value of. So now I no longer owe them money. And then the two companies kiss and the bigger one vores the smaller one. Now, the investors that are getting screwed over could complain about this, but they won't, because if they do, that means that they won't get involved in Elon Musk's next financial scheme. And they're also full of sycophants and oil money.
By the way, if you're wondering who the investors are that gave Elon Musk money to buy Twitter, my little depiction right there was actually pretty accurate. I was not memeing or joking. The list includes Larry Ellison, who's an evil billionaire that believes in mass surveillance, ending the world, and just bought all of media, including TikTok. It also includes people connected to Peter Thiel, who is another evil billionaire that believes in mass surveillance and ending the world. People connected to the mass surveillance company owned by Peter Thiel. Saudi oil money. Crypto money. The founder and former CEO of Twitter that everyone thought was a woke liberal warrior for some reason. And most importantly, Sean Diddy Combs. Yes, you heard me right. Diddy lent money to Elon Musk to buy Twitter.
Now, you would think he only did this once. No, he then proceeded to do it again by selling the company that he just merged into one that he owns to another company that he also owns. He did this by now valuing XAI at $250 billion and valuing SpaceX at $1 trillion. He then made them kiss and they became one company. Now this valuation is insane. The numbers just don't work. But we aren't done yet. That's just the before part. Now we'll get to the part where he's now stealing everyone's money. Now, all of this money is fake. It's not real, and Elon Musk knows this. He can't just use this money. Now, I realize that right now, and for a while now, our markets have all just been a speculative circle jerk, and numbers don't mean anything, and reality doesn't mean anything. But even in this insane environment that we currently are in, you can't just have a few companies you own kiss a couple times and say they're worth $1 trillion and have $1 trillion real dollars that you can use. It doesn't work that way. You need something called exit liquidity, aka real money. For that, he needs to go to the public market so that he can force you and your 401ks to give him that money. Now, there's 2 big players in this that you have to know. The Nasdaq, which is the second largest stock exchange, and the S&P Dow Jones Indices LLC, which is the world's largest independent provider of financial market indices. So I don't want to do a whole lesson on how the stock market works, but I want to explain why this is important.
Okay, this is like the 5th time I've tried recording this. Every single time I try to explain this, I just go way too deep in the weeds and start talking about shit that no one cares about. So let me make this short and sweet. Investors like reducing risk, especially 401ks. They like reducing risk when investing, but they also like big returns. So they do this by, instead of investing in individual companies, they invest in markets as a whole. And there's multiple indices that represent markets as a whole. The big one is the S&P 500, which is the top 500 publicly listed companies. And another big one is the Nasdaq 100. These are just the big indices that everyone invests in so that they can track the market. These two companies essentially decide what gets to be on those indices, and because of that, decide what people's 401ks are invested into. For the longest time, these companies basically just acted as good faith arbiters of listing what represents the market. But as I'm about to explain, that's all about to change.
Elon Musk wants to list on the Nasdaq for $1.75 trillion. The numbers just keep getting larger. I don't even know why he's stopping at 1.75 trillion. Why even use a real number? Just 1.75 billion trillion gajillion. $7 gorillion. Like, just put the zeros in the bag. But this valuation is insane. There's simply not enough buyers in the stock market that want to buy his stock for it to be worth $1.75 trillion. So why not just force everyone to buy his stock at that value? So there's a thing that pump and dumps do. Cryptocurrency, scam companies, what they'll do is they'll sell stock in a company, but only sell a very small amount of it. So let's just say you have a company and you sell 10% of its shares for $1 million. You only need to get $1 million worth of buyers for the stock. And your company is now worth $10 million because you only sold 10% of your company for $1 million. Now, this isn't necessarily a scam, but you kind of limit the supply, hype it up to get demand, enough demand to meet that very limited supply, and then use that to inflate your company's value. Elon Musk is listing SpaceX while only selling 3% of the company, a tiny amount of shares. Then what he's doing is marketing towards retail traders, speculators, and Elon Musk cultists that this is like a ticket for the future. Everyone's about to lose their jobs. If you don't get in right now, you'll be destitute forever. But if you do, you'll become a trillionaire.
Retail is going to be a critical part of this, and a bigger part than any IPO in history, Chief Financial Officer Brett Johnson said during the virtual meeting. Johnson said that the large retail component is by design. Those folks are and have been incredibly supportive of us and Elon Musk for a long time. We want to make sure that we recognize that.
Basically, market as a get-rich-quick scheme to retail investors to sell that tiny sliver of the company at its inflated value. So that the company, even though they only sold a couple $1 billion worth of stock, is worth 1.75 trillion. And because its value is so big, it becomes a decent percentage of the indices like the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq 100, which then forces everyone who owns these ETFs in these indices to then buy the stock at its inflated value, which gives a bunch of exit liquidity for people like Elon Musk and his inside investors to sell all their overvalued shares to the regular people and institutions that are being forced to buy their shares. Now, this is insane, and the markets know this is insane, which is why they specifically have rules to stop this. For example, the Nasdaq has a minimum float requirement of 20%, which means that you need to sell at least 20% of your company on the public markets for it to be listed. They also have a 1-year buffer period before they're put on any indices. This gives an entire year of price discovery for a stock before it gets put in everyone's portfolios to make sure that stuff like this doesn't happen, because you can't really inflate trillions of dollars of value for an entire year. The same stuff applies to the S&P 500. Well, the Nasdaq is currently considering, and very likely will, waive the float requirement, meaning that the company doesn't need to have the minimum 20% float. They're also making a rule for large cap stocks like Elon Musk to be able to be fast-tracked onto the indices, meaning that they can skip the 1-year wait period and can now be listed in 15 days. The S&P 500 is also considering letting companies fast-track. On top of that, it gets even worse. The Nasdaq is also proposing to give a 5x multiplier to companies who list with a low float. Yes, they're going to give a 5x multiplier to Elon Musk's company to make it take 5 times as much of the share of the ETFs as it should. Meaning that the people who are now being forced to buy a stock at the inflated value have to buy 5 times as much of it. This is insane. Because in the United States, you're normally allowed to steal from poor people as a wealthy person, that's fine. But this is also stealing from other wealthy people. Everyone is invested in these ETFs that track the market. Everyone. Like the S&P 500, I think, has $24 trillion alone. They are absolutely decimating their reputation. And these aren't small scam companies. These are the United States financial system. Why would anyone invest their money in the United States financial system if a billionaire can just pay to steal everyone's money? They are literally stripping this country for everything it's worth. Even if you are a capitalist, this is bad, because this isn't a free or fair market. We are completely run by oligarchs that are stripping our country. Like, maybe we could have gotten away with this in the past when everyone relied on the US dollar and needed it to function. But right now we are losing that status. Like, we're currently losing our status as the petrodollar because of the stupid stuff we're doing in Iran. So very soon people might not be forced to use the American dollar to buy oil. We have a weakening US dollar. Our treasury notes have been downgraded because of our spiraling debt. We have weakening trade relations due to tariffs. And now we have our markets changing rules. So specifically, one billionaire can steal everyone's 401k money. Now, I don't want to be alarmist, but the United States is currently doing essentially everything it can within its power to lose its place as the global hegemon. So we might very soon have our first trillionaire thanks to your 401k.